So Donald J. Trump talked to George Stephanopoulos, and one of the topics was about Crimea and Ukraine. I want you to listen into what this clown said, and then we will discuss.
But when Putin says good things, and when we have a possibility of having a good relationship with Russia, I think that's good.
By bowing to his annexation
We're not going to be bowing to anybody. Hey,
George,
you know me pretty well. I don't bow, okay? I don't bow. Yeah. Look, you know, I have my own ideas. He's not going into Ukraine, okay? Just so you understand. He's not going to go into Ukraine. All right, you can mark it down, you can put it down, you can take it anywhere you want.
He's already there, isn't he?
Okay, well, he's there in a certain way, but I'm not there. You have Obama there. And frankly, that whole part of the world is a mess under Obama, with all the strength that you're talking about and all of the power of NATO and all of this. In the meantime, he's going away. He takes Crimea. He's sort of, I mean...
But you said you might recognize that.
I'm going to take a look at it. But, you know, the people of Crimea, from what I've heard, would rather be with Russia than where they were.
Wow, let's break that down. Okay, so mark it down. Putin will not be going into Ukraine. He already has. Okay, don't mark it down. I'm just saying, like, is Crimea the same? Was that in Ukraine? Help me out, George. Help me out. I thought maybe he forgot. He just, like, in that moment in the interview, that I was being, like, overly fair to him, that he forgot that that they'd already gone into Crimea, which was part of Ukraine. But even his spokespeople afterwards were like, no, he was referring to something else. I don't know what it was, but maybe he had a thought in his head and it came out wrong. Like, I would have gone with, oh yeah, he would have forgot. He forgot for a second, but of course he talked about Crimea later. No, it's entirely possible he doesn't know that Crimea was part of Ukraine. And then he says, Obama is the one who let that happen. But you say you actually might be in favor of it. You might be in favor of letting Russia annex Crimea. That's right. I can't believe Obama let it happen, but I would let it happen more. To all the people supporting Donald Trump, wakey, man. This guy doesn't know a thing. You think he's strong? You think he's smart and capable? He doesn't know anything. He comes out on Twitter, of course, afterwards. He's like, when I said in an interview that Putin's not going into Ukraine, you could mark it down, I'm saying, if I'm president, already in Crimea, exclamation point. No, exclamation point to you, Donald. We already knew he was in Crimea. The guy who didn't know was you. Okay, he goes on with another tweet. So with all the Obama tough talk on Russia and the Ukraine, they've already taken Crimea and continue to push. That's what I said. I love his exclamation points. He's a child. This is what kids online do with Twitter. Like, no, you didn't catch me. That's a ad hominem attack, no true Scotsman, and other Latin words. No, that's what I said. That's what I said. I've seen enough trolls to know one. So Donald, classic troll behavior, of course. So now, it actually gets worse, believe it or not, because one of his advisors, Boris Epstein, goes on TV. I cannot believe what he said, but it's funny, so let's show you.
Now let's talk about the larger issue at hand. Again, first of all, Russia did not seize Crimea. We could talk about the conflict that happened between Ukraine and Crimea. It's an ongoing conflict, really, but there was no seizure by Russia. That's an incorrect correct statement, characterization of what happened.
Russia did not seize Crimea? Well, they got a funny way of showing it since they seem to have seized it. You know what he reminded me of? Baghdad Bob. You remember him when we first invaded Iraq and our tanks rolled into Baghdad fairly easily in the beginning? And they had a spokesperson who'd come out. And his nickname was Baghdad Bob. And he would tell you, no, the Americans are not here. In fact, listen.
They are not near Baghdad. Don't believe them. They are nowhere. This is silly.
They are nowhere. They took him like the next day. Now we've got Moscow Boris for Trump going, no, Ukraine has not been seized. What are you talking about? No, the Russians are nowhere near Ukraine. Unbelievable. So Ryan Lizza, who was on that panel, but he was the guy like, what? But he didn't get a chance to speak again. TV is super short. So he went on Twitter afterwards and said, exact quote from Trump campaign surrogate on CNN a few minutes ago, Russia did not seize Crimea. Literally Putin's propaganda. went on to say, Trump surrogate, according to his political bio, emigrated to U.S. from Moscow. Interesting, the Americans. So I don't think he can claim ignorance of the region. And Boris comes back out and says, definitely not ignorant on the region. Thanks. It's a very complicated situation, as Trump said today. U.S. has not led. But that doesn't address the fact that everyone else on the planet acknowledges that, in fact, the Russians have seized Crimea. Lizzie comes back and says, it's not that complicated. You said Russia did not seize Crimea. Nobody but Putin believes that. This Trump guy is unbelievable. And there are reports now that, he got some investments from Russia. Not that he invested into Russia. And in that same interview with George Stephanopoulos, classic traits of a liar. Have you met Putin? No, not in Moscow. I've seen enough liars to know not in Moscow means, yeah, I met him other places. I just didn't happen to meet him in Moscow. So no, I haven't met him. No, not in Moscow. Look, he says, well, I didn't invest in Moscow. I didn't invest in Russia, right? No, that's not what people are alleging. They're alleging that they invested into you because Donald Trump is such a loser. No U.S. bank will give him a loan anymore. Remember, he's brought 6 companies into bankruptcy. Who would be stupid enough to lend him money unless they wanted something else in return? So that's what are some of the allegations regarding Russia. And then he goes on TV and he's like, Russia, what are you talking about? Russia is not in Ukraine. The Americans are not here in Baghdad. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, he's either a lunatic, totally detached from reality, or worse, he's in some ways working with our enemies and wants to purposely lie about reality.